Lift off in 3, 2, 1.
Hey there, writing cadets! Welcome back to Season 2 of Moving Right Along, the podcast by young writers for young writers. We're your hosts,
Ray,
Ruby,
and Kat.
and for today's topic, guys, let's get pumped. We're talking about romance and romance tropes. Guys, I'm getting my romance episode. Romance is a timeless genre, one that spans back centuries. Some of the most famous novels in history are romance ones. Pride and Prejudice, Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights, Romeo and Juliet, which isn't technically a book, but let's look past that. And Twilight. So many classics and amazing novels are centered around love, and within these books are romance tropes.
So, first of all, what are tropes? Which, they're not to be confused with cliches, but tropes are these common themes, plot elements, character personalities, etc. They're basically anything popular enough in literature to be easily recognized and understood. And there's hundreds of tropes out there, but today we're going to focus on the romancy ones.
Before we get onto the main bit of the episode, we're going to play a quick game to warm ourselves up. So the game is, what are the host's favourite romance tropes? So our producer is going to read out a list of 4 romance tropes, and we have to match the trope to the host. And one of them will be a red herring, obviously, because otherwise it would be too easy. So, Simone, would you like to read out those tropes? Would you like to play the game?
Absolutely. Please don't get too competitive. Okay, so our tropes that we have to choose from are class conflict, like social class, grump x sunshine, soulmates trope, and the forced proximity trope. So what goes to who? So what do y'all think Ruby prefers? What is her favorite trope?
3, 2, 1, soulmates.
Class conflict.
I even after.
Okay, guesses are locked in. Moving on. I don't think we
Those
have
are
to round
those
3.
are locked in.
Okay, and what do we think Ray's favorite tropes are?
I think it's Grumpy X Sunshine. Your thoughts?
I also think it's Grumpy X Sunshine.
Yeah.
I
Right.
wrote it down.
Okay.
You are either incredibly predictable or you've just completely fooled the both of us. I guess we'll find out which.
Okay.
Okay, and Kat, what are Kat's favorite tropes?
I think it's the soulmates trope.
I think it's the class conflict because Kat just gives off the vibes that of trying to be intellectual. In a good way.
Is that a roast?
In a good way.
You give up trying to be intellectual vibes.
Like actual intellectual vibes.
You said trying. I heard.
No, I didn't.
Yes,
I
so
don't
humble,
think I
so
said that.
violently.
Guys, I don't think I said that. I
You
don't.
got tired. Today I'm gonna roast back. Okay, Simone, can you reveal to us whether we are right and whether Ruby just insulted me for no reason?
What?
Okay, so our favorite tropes. Ruby's is the soulmates trope.
Yeah, so I got a lot of judgment when DMing that this was my favorite trope to Simone. For preface, this isn't my favorite trope, but me and Ray had the same favorite trope, so we had to go with different ones. But I know that IRL, I don't think soulmates are a real thing. I will preface that. I think that you can be happy with anyone who is right for you. But I think I write a lot of fantasy and speculative, and the idea of the true love is so rooted in fairy tales and the creation of romance in the first place, because that's kind of where it started. Well, not exactly, but one of the places where it started. So I really like the idea of that these two characters were made for each other. I just like the angst that can bring of the idea of why are we made for each other but we don't fit? Why are our worlds struggling to collide? It's very tropey, very overused. But I just think it's so fun to write because it's also really interesting when you're creating the characters that are supposedly soulmates. I don't like the term soulmate. I prefer true love because I think that's cute. But I like to think about about how their personalities, I like to try and cater them to each other. But then you also, like, to have a good story, you need conflict. So then you also have to find the ways that they don't fully fit together that I think is really fun. So there's my justification. Simone, just let me live, okay? I get it. Soulmates is not everybody's favorite, but it's not even my favorite, but it's one of my favorites, so. That's my
Okay.
my reasons.
So Ray's
Oh.
favorite trope was the grumpy ex-sunshine trope.
What a surprise!
Okay, listen, I know I'm predictable, but it was worth it, okay? It's just such a good trope. I mean, it's just so... Okay, I'm a very character-driven writer, and I also really love reading them. Totally not because I grew up on the Percy Jackson books, and there's a specific ship within those books that is that trope. But, anyways... No, it's a lot of fun, especially when you're writing the characters, because it's like one is all like, oh, blah, 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 I'm tough, you know? And then the other one is like, sunshiny rainbows, and it's just such like they're such like character foils for each other, but then they fall in love, and it's like, oh crap, this wasn't supposed to happen. Oopsies. So, yeah.
I love your grumpy voice.
Oh man.
Like a cartoon character.
Okay, and Kat's favorite trope was the class conflict trope.
Because I study politics at the moment, I just really am interested in how the political... No, that's not it. I just think it's kind of interesting because obviously when you have like someone who's poor and someone who's rich, you kind of have... I don't like it when it's like like it's like a kind of My Fair Lady situation where like the rich person like to make the poor person into a rich person. I like it more when like the poor person's like, you rich folk, you don't know anything, and then they show them that actually you live in a world of privilege, not to sound too deep, but also it's just kind of interesting because I like that when if they've got like a rich character, a trope within that trope is when they like don't know how to do normal human things like do laundry. I find that very funny. So because I met a couple of like rich kids who don't know how to do laundry, and I also find that very funny because you're like, okay, you should probably learn how to do that, or like cooking and stuff. So that's why that's my favorite trope. Well, yeah, I think it's my favorite trope. I couldn't decide. It's all a lie. Anyways, moving on to the next thing. Yes.
Prejudice, energy, Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
I love Pride and Prejudice. Okay, anyways, moving on. So, for today's actual topic, that's the conclusion of the game. I don't know... I got both of them right. I don't know if...
Me too.
You guys?
Ray just lost. Ray lost.
Yeah,
Yeah, you did. You lost.
So, guys,
thanks,
moral of the
guys.
story,
I appreciate
Ray's the
it.
biggest loser for today.
Yeah.
And
also,
moving
Ray's
on-
Wow.
predictable. We all knew it was Ray's. You know what? It's
We
bully
all
Ray
knew.
hour.
Well,
Sorry,
to be in my defense, it's not my favorite trope, but Ruby took
Yeah.
mine, so we both
Okay,
have to change
I
it.
say we share it, okay? I say we share.
Yeah.
Sharing's caring.
I
No.
knew that you two would have the same favorite one. I literally said to Simone, I was like, they're gonna have the same one.
Yeah.
Because I knew.
It's
It's
a
a
good
really good
trope,
trope.
okay?
Yeah, we'll get more into that later. But moving on to the topic of the day, romance tropes. So to start us off, we're starting off strong. We're starting off with arguably, arguably currently, in my opinion, which I think most people would agree with this, the most popular romance trope in YA, the YA genre right now. It is enemies to lovers, which is pretty self-explanatory. They start out as enemies, they slowly fall in love. On our last episode, we actually asked the wonderful Shirley her thoughts on this. And she made a good case
Confusing
for
her.
it. How
Yeah.
she's a little confused.
She
It's
didn't
okay.
know what we were talking about. She was like, what? Okay.
Yeah, but what are your
we
guys?
explained it.
Yeah. What are your guys' thoughts on enemies to lovers? Writing it, reading it, just what do you guys think?
Oh man, I have very mixed feelings because I could never write it. I've come to terms with that. I could never. I would just sit down to write it and I would just be cringing the entire time, just be like, get this away from me. Because I don't know, something about it just bothers me. But I feel like if you write it the right way, I think it could be good. I mean, like you said, Shirley definitely did have some very interesting thoughts on it last episode, but I don't know. It bothers me because like a lot of them are written very like toxic and manipulative, but some like the very select few, they're okay. I'll live with them. We can learn to live in harmony.
Such a Ray thing to say.
I'm gonna like do like an avatar thing, like
I was
relations
thinking
with
that.
comedy until the romance enemy to lover attacked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with Ray. I think it depends on execution. I think if you are glamorizing a kind of toxic enemies to lover, because I think oftentimes there are quite a lot of toxic enemies to lovers examples of the trope where like they've done really horrible things to each other and then it's just like a moment of lust and then it's I think in those cases is a worry that you are glamorizing abusive relationships. Like if they're hurting each other, then maybe don't get into a relationship if you're hurting each other because that's not great. So but I think if it's their enemies for other reasons, then like interesting if you can have like Romeo and Juliet's is basically kind of enemies to lover in that they were on different sides and stuff like that. So I think those are kind of interesting. Okay, but I think again it's just all in the execution because you don't want to write something that is just a bit weird, but you want to write something that's shows love in its nicest.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best examples of enemies to lovers, in my opinion, are the ones where it's more their environment has forced them to be enemies as opposed to, like, their personal feelings towards one another. I have read some enemies to lovers that, like. Oh my gosh, I swear, I say the most, like, controversial fandom things on here. Jude and Carden from The Cruel Prince, I think that's an example of a really popular enemies to lovers couple. And I mean, Jude and Carden are very much enemies because they hate each other. But then you can't help but kind of root for them. But at the same time, guys, don't replicate your relationships after Jude and Carden, please. Just for your own mental health.
Yeah. Please don't stab each other. Like that's the main takeaway from enemies to lover. Is that you can like it in fiction, but do not stab your potential partner because that gets you sent to prison. So main takeaway of today's episode. Don't
it can
stab
definitely be
people.
entertaining. Yeah, moral of the story.
And our next trope, very similar to enemies to lovers, but not the same thing, is rivals to lovers. And I say they're different because enemies to lovers can be more used in like a fantasy setting, but rivals to lovers, like when I think rivals to lovers, I think academic rivals or things of the other sort. People who aren't trying to stab each other. But what do you guys think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, I've written rivals to lovers. It's one of like the how many romance tropes have I actually like written into one of my books? A good amount. But this is one of them. I made them art rivals. It was really fun. But it can be, I think rivals to lovers is like Ray kind of said, it's like the real life version of enemies to lovers. It kind of makes a little more sense. And I think that it can be really fun. Honestly, I really like rivals to lovers because it kind of puts this like competitive side to their relationship. And I think if you're a competitive person like me, it can be really enjoyable to watch. And it's definitely a lot more realistic than enemies to lovers and very much like attainable in a contemporary setting. But I think it just gives them like another element to their relationship, like learning to like look past wanting to compete with each other, like looking to the actual like person behind the competition, because people get really obsessed with competitiveness and with like beating each other, and I think that that's where this like really plays in and is like really interesting to read and write. So
yeah, I definitely agree. I think I prefer rivals to lovers over enemies to lovers just because I think it takes some of the best aspects of enemies to lover, the kind of like resentment and like competitiveness, and they're like trying to beat each other without the like actual murder of it. And also I think one of my favorite like versions of enemies to lovers, what am I on about? Rivals to lovers is when they're like rivals because they actually really like each other. I find that so cute. They're like striving academically because they really like each other and they don't realize it, so they're like, I'm so obsessed with them because I want to beat them, but it's not that, it's because they're in love. I think that's really cute. So, and I also think it's quite kind of like not like super realistic, but is slightly realistic because you do have people in real life who are really competitive with each other and they're like, no, I'm only competitive with them because they're horrible, but it's actually because you're like, it seems to me that you kind of want to just spend a lot of time with each other trying to beat each other. So maybe you should think of channeling all that you know, stuff in a good, healthy relationship. So yeah, I think it's quite cute. So that's my feeling. So the next trope that we have is, oh wait, did Ray say something? I forgot.
No.
Sorry. Sorry.
Maybe okay, so maybe it's the contemporary writer in me, but I really like rivals to lovers. I think it's also really cool because sometimes if the writer writes sorry, if you write it a certain way, you can kind of portray it as they're rivals, but they're rivals. I think someone might have said this before, but they're rivals because they want to make each other better. And I think that's really cool because in relationships, it's like a very healthy thing when you want to bring out the best in the other person. So like, I think it can be really cool when you're like, I'm gonna beat you, but I also want you to succeed. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
You know what just occurred to me? What would be like peak rivals to lovers would be if they were like love rivals to lovers. Like that would be amazing. Like two people competing for love, and they're like the two sides of the triangle, and then they turn into lovers. That'd be really amazing. Anyways, sorry, that just occurred to me out of the blue. So yeah, that if someone wrote that, I'd read that. Next trope that we have is like the best friends or childhood best friends to lovers trope. So guys, what do you think about that? This is also quite a controversial one, which I find quite interesting. It's like in some ways it's more controversial than enemies to lovers because some people really, really hate this trope, which I think is quite interesting. What do you guys think about it?
People hate it?
Yeah, some people like I remember when Shadow and Bone came out, people were like, why did people like Mal and Alina together? They're like, oh, it's childhood best friends to lovers, disgusting. So some people really don't like it. So what do you guys think? I can tell by both of your faces that you do not agree.
Those people are wrong. They're wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, Mal and Alina is kind of the only example I can think of like childhood best friends to lovers that's like kind of hated on. But I think childhood best friends to lovers gives you so much to work with in regards to angst. And let me tell you now, angst makes romance. Angst is just the best thing to ever happen in romance, literally ever. I love angst. They have this like history together. They know each other to a certain extent. They probably love each other, and sure, they could like mistake that for platonic love, and then it like transpires into something else. But I think something about that, like, I know you, but like now I'm looking at you from like a different perspective. I'm looking at you in a different way. I think it's so fun. I've written so many childhood best friends to lovers because I love it so dearly. Because it gives you so much like ground to work on to build a relationship. So yeah, raise my fellow childhood best friends to lovers lover. So what do you think?
You guys remember how we were saying we had the same favorite trope in the game and we had to change it?
Yeah.
This was the trope. This was the trope that we both picked. I love it so much. And so I really love writing like platonic, not romance, but like platonic relationships. It's just so much fun. And then seeing it like slowly shift into the romantic part of it is also so much fun. Especially like after they're both like, okay, so we're finally gonna admit that we have romantic feelings together for the other, and we're finally gonna get together. And then it's just so much fun because they already have the relationship. So then they just get to keep building on it. And bonus points if they banter constantly.
Yes!
I love it. It's so much fun! I love it so much! It's just, I'm sorry, it's superior. And you can hate on it all you want, but it's perfect. I'm sorry.
But me and Ray will fight you. You can hate up, but we'll fight you. We'll gang up on you.
Gang up.
We each got half a brain cell, we'll gang up. We have a whole brain cell together.
One whole brain cell.
One whole brain cell, be scared.
I think childhood best friends to lovers is like it can be like a really nice basis for a relationship because they have like all this history and it's probably a lot healthier than entry lovers. The only time I don't like it is when I feel like, you know, when either it feels like they're justifying, you know, people saying, oh, they're being friend zoned or whatever. I hate that when it's like the guy's like, oh, I'm friend zoned, and then it's like, no, he's actually not friend zoned, because I feel like I just don't like that when they like bring up the friend zone, because I dislike that, because it's like, you know, friendship is just as important as love. And like, you know, it's like when they think that the like love relationship is more important than like the friendship relationship, you know, like they're equally important. So that's the only time I don't like that trope, is when it feels like they're just saying, like, oh, their relationship wasn't true until it was love, when it's like, no, the platonic relationship was still sweet. But I think it can be a really nice way to write, like, lovers, because they have, like, history, and it's probably a lot more healthy because they actually like each other. So yeah, that's my thoughts. But obviously I do not feel as strongly on the childhood best friends to lovers as Ruby and Ray do. They have some strong opinions on this.
We love it. Yeah, well, I mean, you're right, or whatever. But I think, like almost every romance trope we're going to talk about, if it's well done, it's enjoyable. I think that's kind of just the way romance works. Like, okay, you don't have to like romance, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying if you like romance, you're going to enjoy any trope if it's well written and it's, like, spaced out in a way that you really like. And I mean, there are, of course, exceptions to that, but I think for the most part, if it's well written, you'll enjoy it. But yeah, our next trope, this is another one I've written, fake dating. Woo! I like it. We'll get back to my thoughts on that. But what do you guys think about fake dating?
Okay.
Any day now, guys. Any day now.
Okay.
Figure, guys. That's your answer.
I think about fake dating is I like it. I honestly do quite enjoy it because I think the thing is, you always know that they're gonna get together, and I just think that's so funny because I don't know, I just vibe with it. I think it's very interesting, and it's very interesting for the characters as well because they get to experience what it's like being in a relationship without having to put the labels in it. And I think it's also really important to teach it. Like, it's really interesting because it teaches us a lot about communication, not to sound too deep about it, but like whenever I read them, I'm just like, how much easier would it be if you just communicated with each other how you felt? And you know, and people say it's unrealistic, or like, no, listen, people in relationships, they do not communicate. If you learn to communicate, then you will not have the problems that when the fake dating trip people always have, because they're like, no, they don't like me. I'm just like, why don't you just ask them? Just ask them. Just straight up ask. Yeah. So that's my feelings on it. As long as it's like done well, it's good, and it's juicy. It's nice and delicious, like a juice. Orange juice. Anyway, Ray, what do you think?
Okay.
Okay, don't get mad at me, Ruby. She's gonna get mad at me. But I don't really like it that much. And maybe it's because I've never, like, read or watched, if it's like a movie or a show or something. Maybe I've never read that trope when it's done well. Maybe I haven't. But I just feel like it's just so cringy sometimes, and I'm like, I just get so mad at it because I'm just like, please, just tell each other. Like, I'm just like, come on, like screaming at the book, like, please. I don't know. I just feel like if it also depends on the reason why the characters are fake dating, because if it's a stupid reason, I'm out. Goodbye. Like, no, I'm not reading it. No. I don't like it. I'm sorry, Ruby.
Ray, I mostly forgive you.
Thank you.
Mostly.
I mean, mostly. Mostly. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with fake dating is that if you're gonna read a fake dating book, you have to be okay with miscommunication, which is in itself another trope, the miscommunication trope, that we're not gonna delve into today because nobody really likes it that much for the most part. But see, the thing is with fake dating is you kind of skip all the build-up in a lot of ways that you have in a normal romance. You know, the build-up to, like, the first time they hug, the first time they kiss, first time they hold hands, things like that. You know, the things that you kind of slowly work your way to in a normal format for a romance book. In fake dating, you kind of brush over all of that, and so all that's really left to build tension is the miscommunication. And so I think that that's why you have to be okay with miscommunication if you're gonna read fake dating, because they've crossed all the physical, well, you know, not all of them, but for the most part they'll cross the physical bases that you know, you build up to in romance books. So then it's just all about the inward emotional angst, and to have angst, you gotta miscommunicate and you gotta have problems with each other. So I get why that could really bother somebody. I don't think fake dating is for everyone. I think you have to read a really well written fake dating to really enjoy it, and I think you also have to just accept that you're gonna kind of hate the characters sometimes for what they're doing. Like, I wrote a whole book where they're fake dating for the whole time, and oh my gosh, sometimes I'm like, y'all are idiots. But you know what? They're really entertaining, so I stand by my fake dating. I think it's fun. Ray, if you ever read mine, hope you don't hate it.
No, I feel like you would write it good. I
Oh,
trust
thank
you.
you.
I have faith.
That's so validating. Thank you.
I hope.
Love that.
Okay, well, then our next trope is the soulmates trope, which, as we heard earlier, is Ruby's favourite trope. Trope? So, Ruby, as your favourite trope, thoughts? Why is it your favourite?
Yeah.
What is wrong with you, as Simone would say?
Guys.
I have no problem with it. It's only
Okay.
Simone's.
Like I said, childhood best friends lovers is my actual favorite trope. But this is like up there. I had to choose a second place, and second place was like tied for like 3 different things. So I was like, okay, I'll just go with this one because I hoped that it wouldn't be the same one as Ray. But I mean, I already kind of said it a little, but I think soulmates just like kind of sets you up for a lot of really interesting character developments and a lot of different, moments that I think are really fun. I have written soulmates, as I've said, but it was a fairy tale retelling, so it made sense, to do the true love's kiss, because, that's, like, the whole thing, and where, like, that's the version of soulmates that I like, where it's like, okay, this person was made to fit with this person, now how do they deal with that? And, like I said, very unrealistic, guys. I know I wish soulmates were a real thing, but I don't think they are, so you can think they are if you want, but I think that, they can set unrealistic expectations for love, like almost all of these tropes, but I think that they're really fun. So I think they're fun to write. I think they're really good in speculative settings. So that's basically all my thoughts. I kind of already gave them, but I like soulmates.
I personally actually really like the soulmates trope. My best friend, whom I actually met through Taiwi, but she's writing a book that has a little bit of the soulmate trope in it, and I got the chance to beta read it and really loved it, not gonna lie. But I know there's like a sort of what's it called? Like a little sub trope. We're gonna call them sub tropes. I think that's cute. But I don't know if you've seen it. It's on like all over TikTok and like the internet and stuff. But it's the one where it's like the string and they're like soulmates because they have the string. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Invisible String by Taylor Swift?
No.
Why do you look like you're about to cry, Ruby? Is it like what's it called? Like the red string of fate? Isn't that?
Yeah, that one. I actually really like that. I mean, again, if it's written well, but I really also like platonic soulmate trope. That's gonna happen a lot this episode. I'm just gonna keep bringing up platonic relationships because they're so much fun. But yeah, I like the soulmate trope. I think it's a cool idea that there's someone out there who is literally created to fit you. It's not realistic, of course, but I think it's cool. So.
Well, I'm gonna be the one to say I don't really like the soulmates trope in most cases. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. I think it's because I just prefer it when the sort of relationship is like they're not meant for each other, but they're like they make each other into we have soulmates. You just like you find someone and like you like grow together, and by doing that you're like made into each other's soulmates. And I think that's really cute, like that idea of making someone into your soulmate by just living with them and like experiencing. I think that's why I don't like soulmates where it's like they're meant for each other. Like they have to like work at it. They have to work hard for it. But I think bringing up the red string of fate was quite interesting because I think I'll just double checking, but it is like from like Chinese mythology, and I really like if you can insert it in like a fairy tale setting or like in a mythological setting like that, and using like different folklores and stuff like that, that would be quite interesting to read. In general, like I said, it's like all depends on how it's written, but in general I prefer ones where they have to fight, they have to strive. It's not because they're made for each other. I prefer that. That's how I feel. I'm sorry, guys.
It's okay. But that's really cute to like make someone into your soulmate. Oh my gosh, that's adorable. Anyways, I mean, yeah, the soulmate stuff I've written, I did that one. It's like it's a little well, they're soulmates, but like they're also like destined to kill each other. So that's like, that's the other
Ooh.
elements to it. Yeah,
That's
so it's
an
not just
interesting idea.
That is
it's
interesting.
not
Should've
just
said that.
guys. It's not just soulmates, guys. It's not just soulmates. Okay, now I've justified myself. Thank you. All right, so moving on to another one of the most controversial tropes in arguably any industry, especially the YA one. We've got the love triangle. So Ray looks like getting
I think
pretty worked up there,
let Ray speak.
I have
let you explode.
so many thoughts, okay?
Do
All
it.
right. Listen, this makes me so mad because in most, like, literature or books or just media in general that have the love triangle trope, it's not an actual triangle. It's just, let's say, for example, there's this girl, right? And then there's two guys that like the girl. That's not a triangle. That's just one of the vertexes, and then two of the points connecting to the vertices. Okay? Listen, it's not a triangle, and it makes me so mad because then you can't have an actual love triangle without at least one of them being some form of queer. Okay? And I stand by that. You people don't know how to write love triangles, and it makes me so angry because it could be like a really nice trope. It could be very entertaining to watch, like, this girl likes him, but he likes her, and it's just like this whole thing. But no one ever writes it the right way, and it makes me so mad. But yes, I do think it can be a very nice trope if you can write it the way it's supposed to be written. Write it as an actual triangle and not. Yes, thank you. Those are my thoughts.
Right, you
Thank you
need
for
to
that
write
TED
an
talk
actual
about math.
triangle. Make a triangle. Do it for the people.
Go for the people. I mean, what do you think about the general, like, the non-mathematical love triangle, the one that is not geometrically, the one that's like really common? Because yeah, what do you guys think about that? Because I know a lot of people have very controversial, very strong opinions about it. Some people absolutely despise it. Some people are like, no, love triangles are the way to go. And they are like the most common, I think they're probably the most common love trope, I would say, romance trope, because it's in basically every romance book, is that even if you think you've gotten away, you're like, oh, there's no love triangle here, they'll hit you with one. They'll be like, you thought you got away? No, you didn't. So what do you guys think about the non-correct one?
Yeah.
Even though
I mean,
it should be geometric.
in the boom of YA, love triangles were like literally everywhere. Like when you think about Hunger Games, To All the Boys I've Loved Before. There's so many more examples that I can't think of. I mean, Twilight, that's like the most famous love triangle basically of all time. There's so many examples of it, and that were really big in like the 2010s to 2015 YA era. That was, crazy. But I personally, okay, here's my thoughts on love triangles. I don't really like reading them. One love triangle, I really only read one love triangle that I was like, I kind of like this. I didn't love it, but I liked it, was Tessa, Will, and Jem in the Infernal Devices series by Cassandra Clare. They aren't siblings, so that's a really good start for Cassie there. Anyways, yeah, so that's a really good start for that. I think it's, and in the end, I'm gonna try and avoid spoilers as much as possible, but whether you were Team Will or Team Jem, you feel satisfied at the end. You feel like, okay, yeah, I liked this. And also all the characters. Okay, in a way, right, it was an actual triangle, not romantically, because Will and Jem are, like, the bestest of friends ever. So they have a platonic link between them. Yeah, so I think that also made it pretty, lovable, is, like, all the characters, you love them, and they all just want what's best for each other, and I think that that's what makes it better, is the guys aren't competing with each other to win Tessa's heart, because they love each other so much, and they even, at certain points, each of them, like, lets go of Tessa because they want to make the other happy. They want the other to, like, find love. But, I like that you feel satisfied at the end. But that's, like, the only one I really read that I, liked. And then I love the idea of writing one, though. It just sounds so fun to me. I don't know why. I actually haven't written a love triangle yet. I'm gonna do it, though, one day, and I'm gonna make it everyone's problem. and it's gonna be so fun. But I think I would, if I was to do it, I definitely would raising their hand. I definitely would go the route of more like how Cassandra Clare did it, where the guys aren't competing with each other, because I think that's just like, I just don't really enjoy that. I don't really like the like we're competing for her love. Like, it just feels like a moment the author like wanted to do a self-insert. These two beautiful men want me. Like, that's just what it feels like to me every time I read it. So yeah, but that's me. So
I have something to say. Would you like to write it, Ruby, because of the miscommunication?
yeah, that'd be pretty fun. The eggs, yes.
Wow. That's
So messy. I love it. It's so messy, and it's not just messy with two people. It's messy with three. Whew.
That's fair. I think it would be really cool, like, if someone wrote a love triangle, an actual triangle. I'm not letting go of that. If like two of them had their eyes set on the other one, but then they were like, never mind, and then the triangle turned towards the other side. I think Kat, you might have mentioned that before.
Yeah, I just mentioned that. I thought it was funny.
You did?
Like rivals to lovers, but it's like love rivals to lovers. That'd be quite funny.
It would be very entertaining to watch. But on the board next is the forced proximity trope.
Wait, I didn't get to say my.
Love
triangle.
you speak? I'm sorry. Go, Kat. I'm sorry.
You don't care,
My bad.
It's miscommunication. Okay.
Guys,
what I was gonna say
is this a love triangle?
Yeah.
I my thoughts on love triangle is, in most cases, I think it can be entertaining, like Ruby said, if it's well written, and also as long as it doesn't seem like an author self-insert, I'm fine with it. Also, what I love in like a good love triangle ends with like the person at the like apex of the triangle just leaving and like not being with either of them. I'm like, I love that, because I just find that so funny, because they've got like two people fighting for their attention, and then they're just like, peace out, I'm out of here. Like, if someone writes a love triangle like that, I'm like, ooh, you guys should see Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. It's this musical TV show. I recommend it. I've kind of given a spoiler away just now because I was talking about love triangles when people end up alone, but you should watch it anyways. It's really, really great, and I just love that at the end. It's just like, ooh, you're like, ooh, which one is she gonna go for? And it's like, peace out, I'm out of here. I love that. I love that kind of thing. So that's when I think love triangles are done well. But you can have like the normal love triangle where they end up with one of them done well, but I think the problem with that is always the person who they don't end up with. You always just feel so sorry for them. I'm just like, that's so sad. That's such a sad life. I can't read that without feeling really bad for the other person. So that's how I feel, because I can't root for either of them. I'm just like, why can't everyone just be happy? So that's my feelings on it. But yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, so next up on the board is the forced proximity trope.
I like it. I haven't written it yet. I'm gonna. Kind of. But I mean, with this comes another very popular trope. There's only one bed. That's a very well-known one.
Oh.
But forced proximity, I think, can be so fun. Forced proximity is very much something where it's not just that. You throw in another trope as well, such as, rivals to lovers, enemies to lovers. Like, there has to be a reason that them being together, they want to get away from each other. And so that's where it kind of plays into a bunch of different tropes. Even like arranged marriage or fake dating can be forced proximity, where like they just can't escape each other. But I really like it. A really good example of it that I've read, that's one of my favorite romances I've read, is the Dance of Thieves duology by Mary E. Pearson. There's the two main characters, Kazi and Jace. They're like forced proximity for a good bit of the book, and it creates so much mess and so much miscommunication, and I love it. And that, of course, they're an enemies to lovers, sort of enemies to lovers. It's more like their environment is forcing them to be enemies, their jobs or whatever, and that's a really good one. That's a really good example. But I think what forced proximity does best is create a lot of tension. And, you know, the art to a romance is to create romantic tension, where it's just like, you know, even like through the book, you can like feel like the energy, like in the room, the energy between the two, and you're like, oh, what is happening here? So I think that's what forced proximity does best. And I think even forced proximity can be used more as like a sub-trope, where like at one random point, like they're forced to be around each other, you know, the one bed trope, that's a forced proximity. Just like, I think it's a smaller trope that can really amp up bigger tropes. So
I was like, who's gonna go? Okay, so I would say, yeah, I think why can't I say either? Forced proximity can be a really interesting trope. I think one that I quite like is one where they don't know each other at all before. Like, when I think of a really interesting forced proximity one is if they're like forced proximity for survival, like they're in the wilderness or something and they have to like rely on each other to survive, and like they don't know each other at all. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And if you want one that's like forced proximity, enemies to lover, and they don't know each other, man, like
that's Dance of Thieves. That's Dance of Thieves. Okay.
Yeah, but also if you've ever read Six of Crows, Nina Tires, yeah,
Yes!
that, when they meet, I was like, oh, it's got the, like, they're like relying on each other to survive, but they're also enemies to lover, and they're also like they don't really know each other, and I kind of like, I like that because they don't know, like, if you're getting to know someone because you're like forced proximity, and it's also quite realistic because people in adrenaline situations tend to form very close bonds with the people around them. So yeah, that's interesting. That's why I think it can be really, really interesting and well, because as well, what's really great is if after the survival situation, then they have to like learn to live with each other in like the everyday life, and they're like, how do we fit into each other's everyday life when we were like so different? Yeah, so that's how I feel about forced proximity. It can be very nice, very good.
I really like this trope, especially when they don't know each other, like you said. I read this book a pretty long time ago. Its title did not age well, so I'm sorry, but it's called, I believe, Quarantine. You can see why it didn't age well, but it's basically about these two teenagers, and they board this flight, and I'll keep this short, but there's a guy, and they both get sick, and then, well, they're not really sick, but the one girl doesn't want to go home, so she kisses the other guy, and they have to both stay in quarantine for like a month with only each other, and they're complete strangers. And it's just this whole thing that's like such, why, what is going on? Who are you? What is this? It's so entertaining to watch because it's just so stupid in a way. Like they're both just so stupid. It's like there's something there. You should capitalize on that sooner or later, please. Thank you. But I think it's very entertaining when they don't know each other.
Love that. I'm gonna get that book, Greg, from you later. I want to read it now.
Yeah, you know, I was literally writing down right when you started saying that book, I wrote it down on a piece of paper because I was like, I really need to know what this book is.
Oh,
so our next trope is Fae Romances. So for those who don't, for those who don't know, it's like a fairy kind of romance sort of thing, isn't it? With like the fair folk kind of vibe. So it's stuff like, if you've ever read what's it called, you were literally talking about earlier, Jude and Carter, where what's it, the Cruel Prince, right? So they normally have like the fair folk, and they have all the tropes involved with them. What do you guys think about it? It's becoming very, very popular. There's like a lot more books about it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, so I mean, immediately when you say Fae, it's like either Cruel Prince or ACOTAR, Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I don't like it. I'm sorry. I personally, I haven't read A Court of Thorns and Roses, but I've heard a lot about it. I've heard a lot of very mixed opinions on it. I have read The Cruel Prince, which I will say I like The Cruel Prince. I really like the world. I really like the idea. I like the concept where it's like a brutal fairy world. It's not like, you know, all magical and take me away and, you know, things like that. It's like a very violent world, which I think makes it a lot more interesting than like the, oh, just so beautiful, so magical. But personally, I think Fae Romances can get a little, how do I say this nicely? A little weird. The whole idea of, like, an 1,000-year-old Fae falling in love with, like, a 17-year-old girl doesn't quite, sit right with me, personally. It just seems a little, just a little, I think, you know, in a real-world context, that's very gross. And, you know, suspension of disbelief, you know, read what you want to read, I don't really care, read what you like, but personally, I think it's kind of, odd. And just from what I've heard, and I'm not going to say anything specific because once again, I've targeted too many fandoms. I think that Fae romances are often self-inserts where it's like this normal human girl gets whisked away from the harsh world around her to this beautiful Fae world where even though she's a basic human and really has nothing special about her, a Fae who is incredibly beautiful and amazing and has 1,000,000 years of knowledge falls in love with her. I think, you know, I think it's a little self-inserty to me, but, you know, it could not be. It could not be. It could not be.
You got the part where she changes him, right? Like, she's
yeah,
the reason that he changes. Like, he's never, like, changed
She's
before
kneeling in
for
front
thousands
of
and thousands of
him.
years.
I know this isn't you. I know this isn't you.
Look at me, look at me.
Yeah.
This isn't you, don't hurt me. No.
I know you're in there somewhere.
I know you're in there. No, I agree. It's kind of with Fae romances. I think it can be done well. Like again, if it's written well and if it's interesting and if you're using it to introduce like a Fae world and sort of what the kind of cultural differences would be and like the actual problems with dating someone who's like who will live much longer than you. That's interesting. But if you're using it for like 1,000-year-old person to get with a like teenager, no. Like it wasn't quite a Fae romance, but when I was like 13 or something, so back before I knew better, obviously I was younger and dumber back then. I thought I wrote this thing where she wasn't quite a Fae, but she was like going to be in a relationship with this other character, and I was like, oh, it'll be fine as long as she says, oh, I'll wait until you're 18. And then like a few years later, I was like, oh, this is not fine. This is very not fine.
No.
Like, them waiting until they're 18 does not make it fine. So, no. Bad. Don't do that. So that is my advice about Fae romances is please don't have them have creepy age gaps. What you should do is, if you've ever seen What We Do in the Shadow, there's this really funny gag where the vampire's like, oh, I'm 1,000 years old or whatever, and he's like dating a 90-year-old, like a grandma, right? And he's like, I know the age difference shocks some people. I'm basically a cradle robber because he's like 1,000 years old and she's like 90, like 90. And like in those kind of cases, it's like that is kind of more interesting if you actually had someone who's like an actual adult dating like
That's hilarious.
like a 1,000-year-old person, because at least then they're actually an adult, not a child. So that's my feeling on it. But if you write them interestingly well, then sure, Fae romances, but don't use them for your self insert, please. Hey, what do you think?
unless it's Tinkerbell, I'm not vibing with any of the fairy things. I really like fairies in general, but something about it just creeps me out. Like you said, I really liked this movie when I was little, and to be fair, it is a very good movie. But I think its name was like Epic or something.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's like the world with all like the people who are like super super tiny, and I don't know, it's a whole thing. But they did have like a pretty brutal world, if I remember, which should make it more interesting. But something about it sort of creeps me out. I don't know why.
Love that. Yeah, I mean, Fae, we've said this basically for every trope, but it can be done right, it can be done very wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So just keep that in mind if you're going to write a Fae romance. In kind of the same vein, just a little bit different, but in some ways same energy, is the Mafia Romance, which if you listened to our last episode, I may or may not have referenced a few times. But you know, what do you guys think?
I cannot take this trope seriously. I literally can't. I've seen too many random like bits from fanfics and stuff that like just pop up on my phone without any warning, and I can't take it seriously anymore. I'm sorry. It's just no.
Yeah. I feel like in most cases, 90% of cases, I dislike it because I feel like it's a bit stupid. Not gonna lie. I know I'm gonna offend the entire like Mafia romance community, but like the idea of you, like the thing is, like they're like, oh, they're honorable Mafia. I'm like, no, they're criminals. Like, even if they're not hurting you, or they're like, oh, I don't hurt women and children. I'm like, okay, if you sell drugs, then you're like no, it's still bad. You're still a bad person for doing this. Or if you like go beat people up, like still bad. Like it's not a good thing. Like the only case where I will accept a Mafia romance if it's something like the child of like the Mafia like boss and they want to get out of the life, fair enough, go for it. That is okay with me. But when it's like I'm the head of the Mafia but I fall in love with like a normal person, I would feel like if I was a normal person I'd be like, you killed people, sorry, no thank you, I'm out of here. I don't, that's why I think it's kind of stupid, so yeah.
I mean, I think there's a stereotype with Mafia romances of them being very badly written and very, just not even really romance books. They're usually, from what I've heard, more like just like straight up smut books. So I think there's like that stereotype with them, which I think when I think of Mafia romances, that's what I think of immediately. And I mean, that's not to say Mafia stories can't be good, but I think just that demographic of Mafia stories has kind of ruined it for me. I'm just like, okay, I will say though, fantasy Mafias, I think those are really entertaining. If it's like a fantasy kind of Mafia situation, I think those are cool. In the YA category, not in the adult smut category. But it's just such a thing. Just a thing that I try and stay away from. Yeah, so sorry Mafia romance community. Live your life. We're good. We'll pass.
Just live it away from us, okay?
Yeah.
Because we don't want you bringing the Mafia down on us. Because, like, also, like, not gonna lie, something that cracks me up is the idea of, like, actual Mafia people just being, just thinking, we're so ferocious, we're so scary, and then, like, all the books I've written about them is just, like, them falling in love with random ass.
But, like, he
American
bakes.
music.
It's okay, guys, that he murdered people. He's, like, a baker. He, like, bakes in his free time.
He bakes, and he, like, made me cookies, so that's what's important. And it's like, no.
And he's dark and glooming, and, like, he's hot and he's tall, so isn't that all that matters?
Like,
isn't that it?
If you actually write about, like, the actual ethical implications and actually, like, go in depth and explore it, then yes, go for it. But if you just say, hey, it's excused that he murdered all those people because he likes me, I will laugh in your face. I will laugh, I will look at you in the eyes and laugh at you. Because no, just because he likes you doesn't make him a good person. So our next trope, and our final trope, is the grumpy and sunshine sort of trope. So this is where they have a grumpy character and a sort of sunshine, lovely character. Ray, what are your thoughts? This is your other favourite one. You have thoughts.
Okay. I know I kind of gave my thoughts on it before, but I personally really like writing these characters because it's so funny to me, because it's like, in literally any other universe, you should not have been this close. Like, the characters should not have even become friends. Like, they should have been complete enemies because they're such different characters. Like, one is literally the epitome of glass half empty, and one is the epitome of glass half full. So it's like, why do they go together? But they do. And I also really like it because, especially if one's like super, super grumpy, you know, like hates the world and everything, all the edgelord stuff, and the other one's like all sunshine and rainbows and very naive. I think it could be really fun to watch them both rub off on each other and sort of introduce their own personalities to the other, but like not in a bad way, but in a growing together kind of way. And I also, because we're talking about this trope, I need to mention the roots of where I saw this trope. Shout out to the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan, Solangelo. I gotta say it, but yeah, I really like this trope. Yeah. it's really interesting to write. I like it.
No, I totally agree. It's so nice to I love the relationships where you see them together and everyone in their lives is like, how does that work? But then the reader, because they're in their heads, like sees exactly how it works and exactly how they just like make each other's lives better. And like the sunshine helps the grumpy be a little happier, and the grumpy keeps the sunshine like grounded in reality, and just like things like that, you know, where it's just like they learn to how they complement each other, which I think is just a fundamental part of romance writing, finding how your characters complement each other, finding how they help each other be better humans, because that's how relationships should be in real life. And we, like Ray was saying, we're setting examples for real life relationships in writing. So it's important. It's definitely an important kind of idea, and it's just completely encapsulated in Grumpy X Sunshine.
I 100% agree. I think it is very adorable and very cute and so sweet. If any of you have ever watched Fruits Basket, that anime, it's got some great Grumpy and Sunshine, because it's just like the Sunshine character is like so wholesome, and then like the Grumpy person, and then they like help each other and they learn to grow together, and like it's about seeing like the learning to be like optimistic, and like the Sunshine person learning to not like to stand up for themselves and stuff like that. It's like it's just so cute. I like that. So that's my feelings. I don't have any further comments. It's just it's adorable. Get on board or get out of the way.
Yeah. So today, in a couple of the different tropes, we've touched on moral ethics in writing, which can happen a lot in romance. And I think one thing that is often not really exactly per se a debate, but a disagreement in the writing community is the love of fluff versus the love of spice. And fluff is like the pure side of a relationship, like, you know, like the cute stuff. The spice is the more intimate parts of a relationship that, you know, smut. So I think that there's not really an easy way to put that. But you know, within this debate, we wanted to give our thoughts on it a little. And I'm very passionate about the fluff side of things, for both personal reasons, and then also I write YA, and I think that YA is about teenagers. It's for teenagers, and lately what I've been noticing a trend is that spice is slowly becoming more and more common in the YA genre. And you know, if you want to read that, I don't care. Live your life. Live your life the way you want to live it. But I think that the fact that it's leaking into YA, I don't think is good, personally. Because YA is geared to a demographic of, I think the exact ages is about 13 to 17 or 18. I think that's like the specific demographics. And those are young kids. Like a 13-year-old reading a spice book, like that's probably not what's best for them, just in like growing up. So I think that it can be a controversial topic, and just that I think that spice does not belong in YA. I'm saying it right now. I think new adult or adult are alternate genres that you can go to that have the same demographic nowadays, that you will reach people. But I think that, you know, if you want to write smut or write explicit scenes, I say you move up from YA, because it's becoming a lot more common in YA. And that's not to say like don't write what you want. Do write what you want. Just genre it correctly, because I know from experience getting a little scarred, because you think that a book is geared to your age, and then you read it and you're like, this is not what I want to be reading. So that's what I think. What about you guys?
Yeah, I am definitely on your side with that one. But I think another big problem with the whole spice thing leaking into YA is that I'm sure a lot of people listening to this who have been reading for almost their entire, like reading for fun, I mean, for like most of their lives can relate to this, but I was reading YA from a very early age just because my reading level was too advanced for like kids books. So Ruby's making
We're too
sorry.
advanced.
Threw me off.
Sorry, we're too advanced. We're just better.
But like I don't know what age I started reading it at, but I maybe like 11 or something, which is really, really young to be introduced to that kind of material. And I got lucky because I wasn't. You know, I grew up before the whole YA, you know, the whole spice stuff has started leaking into YA, but I think it's really problematic that that's starting to be a thing, especially if there's more kids, which I'm sure there are, that are reading YA from an earlier age. And they're getting exposed to that kind of stuff, and it's like, no, I don't like it. I mean, I do understand why other people like to read it, but then again, I look to some of my friends who have written the kind of stuff I'm talking about, and it's weird because you're like 14, you're like a freshman in high school. Stop. It's like, what the heck? So, yeah, it's controversial.
Yeah,
Period.
I think there's a difference between understanding that yes, teenagers have sex. That is true. Teenagers will have sex. And okay, sometimes in a book you're gonna have to write that the teenagers had sex. There's a difference between saying yes, they had sex, and writing whatever the hell those YA authors are on, because there's a difference between saying yes, they had sex, and like glamorizing it and like basically writing like smut, basically, because you should not be writing that in a YA book, because like I said, it's for like children. It's for children. Please stop it. It's like, if you want to write that, go ahead, but write it about adults first of all, and write it for adults, because at the end of the day, it's not legal to show that kind of like videos to young children. So why is it okay to write about it? No, don't do it. So yeah, acknowledge that maybe yes, teenagers have sex, and also if you can insert a good thing about safe sex, go for it. But don't write a 10-page thing about the 2 15-year-olds. Don't do it. Just please stop.
Please.
So that is my feeling on it. Is that it's fine to acknowledge that those things happen. It's not fine to make it like a whole thing in your book, because there are going to be some teenagers who haven't had sex who are going to be reading that, and they're just like, oh, so this is what I need to know, and I'm like, no, don't read it from a book, stop it. So that is how I feel, is that's not great, because you're romanticizing bad practices. So,
yes. And I also want to say to them, this is, we're gonna keep on going with this, because there's one other thing I want to say. Just because you marry them does not mean that it's morally right. Just because you randomly marry 2 17-year-olds does not mean it's morally right for you to be writing sex scenes between 2 children. So we'll leave that there. Yeah, but is there anything else you guys want to say on that, or?
Yeah, I think it's just, be reasonable. Understand whether you're doing it for the sake of the story, like you're saying, this is realistic, or if you're doing it because you want to write about teenagers having sex, because if it's the latter, don't. Just don't.
No problem.
Just make them
Please.
Adults instead, please.
We are the audience for YA, and we are asking you to stop. Yeah, but
as the only adult, I say no. Please don't.
Yes.
As the adult, I'm like, please stop. Why are you doing this?
Yeah, but I think that romance overall, it's really important to think about who your audience is, both in the publishing industry and both who you want to be reading it. When it comes to choosing whether you're writing adult or YA or new adult or whatever. But yeah, that is our discussion on romance today, guys. This was so much fun. And thank you all so much for joining us in our discussion today on romance and romance tropes. I enjoyed myself very thoroughly. Whew, good time. And guys, amazing news! This isn't going to be our only romance-themed episode of the season! Next week, we're having a very, very special guest. It's Allison Saft, the author of Down Comes the Night and the upcoming A Far Wilder Magic. I don't know if you could tell, but we are all really excited. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to talk to her a little more about romance. So if you enjoyed this, definitely tune in then, because then we're going to get an actual professional's opinion on writing romance. Yeah.
Our writing prompt for today is to try out a romance trope that you aren't familiar with and stretch yourself creatively through romance. It can be really rewarding, and you never know, you might find your new favourite trope to write. And then, like Ruby, you can go on and write every single one.
Okay, that's literally my goal. I want to write every romance trope in existence at least once. Anyways.
Apart from the Mafia one, please.
No Mafia, no Fae. No Mafia, no Fae. Sorry.
Yeah, it's like Pokemon. Gotta catch them all.
No, I want to collect a book in every genre like Thanos collects Infinity Stones. That's how I'm living my life. But, that's for another day. That's for another day.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, that's all from us today, Writing Cadets, and we'll see you on our next adventure.
Thank you for listening to the Moving Right Along podcast made possible by the Young Writers Initiative. You can follow us on Instagram at Moving Right Along Podcast or find us on tywi.org. And while you're there, why not join our Discord server, The Writers Town? Thank you to our team without whom this wouldn't be possible. The Grump, Simone, The Sunshine, Jasmine, The Enemy, Cassette, and The Rival, Delaney. All music is by Kevin MacLeod at filmmusic.io. Today you heard Beauty Flow, and all sound effects are from the Free Sound Project.